The 7-year-old son of the millionaire was missing until the housekeeper subscribed to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The piercing sound of the ambulance siren sliced through the morning air of the upscale neighborhood like a sharp blade, echoing between the imposing mansions on Caldwell Lane. It was a March Sunday, one of those days when the sky in Dallas dawns with a clear blue that promises a perfect day, but would quickly turn into the worst nightmare for the Caldwell family. Inside the contemporary mansion, with its mirrored glass and meticulously maintained gardens, chaos had taken over. Agitated voices mixed with hurried footsteps across the Carrara marble hallways, while cell phones rang incessantly with calls from relatives, friends, and inevitably, the press that was already sniffing out the tragedy. "Michael! Michael! Where are you, my son?" Edward Caldwell's desperate cry reverberated through the 8,600-square-foot house. At 42, the influential financial investor, known for his million-dollar deals on the NYSE and his cold demeanor in negotiations, was completely out of control. His hands trembled as he searched every room, every closet, every possible hiding place where his 7-year-old son might be playing hide-and-seek. But this was no game. Michael had vanished. The family gathering from the previous day still left its traces around the house. Crystal glasses piled in the gourmet kitchen, remnants of French canapés on silver trays, and the lingering aroma of Cabernet Sauvignon that the family patriarch, his grandfather Henry Caldwell, had opened for the special occasion. It was supposed to be a celebration. The 85th birthday of the patriarch, a man who had built a real estate empire from scratch and saw in Michael not just a grandson, but the future heir of his lineage. "Calm down, Edward. The police are already on their way." Isabella Martin's voice sounded controlled, almost professional. At 29, the digital influencer with over 2 million followers on Instagram maintained her impeccable posture even amidst the despair. Her perfectly styled blonde hair contrasted with her blue eyes that, no matter how hard she tried to disguise it, showed more concern for the possible consequences for her public image than for Michael's whereabouts. She had married Edward just 2 years ago, taking on the role of stepmother with the cold elegance of someone who knew exactly what she wanted from the union. "Calm? How can you say calm?" Edward turned to her with bloodshot eyes. "My son is missing, Isabella. My 7-year-old son has disappeared from our home." In the corner of the living room, observing everything in absolute silence, Mary Johnson kept her calloused hands clasped over her navy blue uniform. At 46, she bore the sun-kissed marks of the scorching Texas sun from the small town she had left 15 years ago in search of a better life in Dallas. Her small brown eyes, though small, were incredibly observant, capturing every detail, every expression, every whispered word in the corners of the house. Mary had known this family for 8 months. Having been hired as a housekeeper 3 times a week, she came from a small town in Texas where she had raised 3 children alone after her husband abandoned her to seek fortune in mining. Now, with her children grown and independent, she supported 2 grandchildren, while her youngest daughter studied nursing. Every cent of her $25,000 daily wage was counted and recounted before being sent home or spent on the basic needs of her simple life in a 2-room apartment in a modest neighborhood in Dallas. "Mary," Edward approached her, his voice choked. "Did you see anything strange yesterday? Anyone different? Did Michael say anything?" Mary shook her head slowly, but her eyes revealed something more. She had noticed, indeed, details that no one else had paid attention to. The way Michael had played alone in the garden during the party, drawing something on the ground with a stick. The way he had looked at the side door of the house, the one that led directly to the service area, with an expression she couldn't decipher at the time. "No, Mr. Edward, the boy was quiet, playing, but—" She hesitated, weighing each word. He asked where his mother's room was. The silence that fell over the living room was deafening. Isabella stiffened imperceptibly while Edward clenched his fists. Michael's biological mother, Carolina, was a forbidden subject in that house. She had separated from Edward when the boy was 3 years old, and since then it was as if she had never existed. "And what did you say?" Edward's voice came out harsher than he intended. "I said I didn't know, Mr. Edward, that he should ask you." The doorbell rang, interrupting the tension. It was the investigators from the civil police, led by Detective Marcelo Santos, an experienced 48-year-old man who had dealt with dozens of missing persons cases in the city's affluent neighborhoods. He knew that these cases often involved much more than met the eye. As the officers began their procedures, isolating the house as a crime scene and interrogating everyone present, Mary Johnson remained in her corner, observing. She had learned over decades of working in family homes that the most important truths were whispered in the hallways, revealed in evasive glances and hidden in the details that the employers considered insignificant. And there was something she still hadn't told anyone, something she had discovered that morning when she arrived to clean up after the party. In Michael's room, behind the toy cabinet, she had found some crumpled papers, drawings made with colored pencils, showing what appeared to be blueprints of the house, with arrows and paths marked, and in the corner of one of them, written in the shaky handwriting of a 7-year-old, 2 words that made her heart race: "Find Mommy." Mary tucked the drawings into her uniform pocket, feeling the weight of the discovery like a stone in her chest. Her experience of Mary Johnson and her grandmother told her that Michael hadn't simply disappeared. He had run away, and he had a plan. 2 weeks had passed since Michael's disappearance, and the routine of the Caldwell mansion had turned into a nightmare of endless investigations, journalists camped on the sidewalk, and the constant noise of helicopters from the press hovering over the neighborhood. Mary maintained her work routine, arriving promptly at 8 in the morning, but now under the watchful eyes of the investigators, still wandering around the property. It was a rainy Thursday when she made the discovery that would completely change the course of the investigations. While cleaning the service area, something caught her attention on the floor near the side door of the house, the same door that Michael had stared at during his great-grandfather's birthday party. "How strange," she murmured to herself, crouching down for a closer look. There, among the cobblestones of the floor, were small grains of reddish sand, completely different from the dark soil of the Caldwell garden. Even more intriguing were the almost imperceptible marks of small footprints, the size of a child's sneaker which Michael wore. Mary was well acquainted with that shade of red soil. It was identical to that which covered the roads of her hometown in Texas, but here in Dallas, where could Michael have stepped on something like this? She tucked some samples of the sand into a tissue, driven by an instinct she couldn't explain. "Mary, are you all right?" The voice of Claude, the 55-year-old gardener who had tended to the family's gardens for over a decade, startled her. He was a thin man, sunburned skin, and hands eternally dirty from the earth. Unlike the other staff, he lived in a small cottage at the back of the property. "Oh, Claude, you scared me." Mary stood up, discreetly hiding the tissue with the soil. "I was just cleaning here. This rain brings so much dirt." Claude stepped closer, his attentive eyes fixed on the ground where she had been. "Red soil, huh? Funny, I saw the same thing in the front yard yesterday. I thought it was from the construction at the neighbor's house, but they're only using concrete there." Mary's heart raced. "Did you see when this soil appeared?" "It was right after your father's party. I remember because on Sunday I had swept everything clean before the guests arrived." Claude scratched his head, thoughtful. "You know what else, Mary? I found it strange that Stephen arrived so late that day." Stephen was the family's private driver, a reserved 60-year-old man who had been driving for the Caldwells for 8 years. Always punctual, always discreet, he knew every street in Dallas like the back of his hand. "What do you mean, late?" Mary tried to keep her voice casual, but her heart was racing. "He always arrives at 7 in the morning on party days to help with the preparations, but that Sunday he only showed up after 10. He said he had a problem with the car, but his BMW was spotless without a scratch." Mary felt a chill run down her spine. By 10 in the morning that Sunday, Michael had already been discovered as missing. The party had ended the night before, and by morning Edward had noticed that his son was not in his room. If Stephen had arrived late that morning... "Claude," she lowered her voice, "do you think something strange might have happened?" The gardener looked around, ensuring they were alone. The rain was pounding against the windows of the house, creating a curtain of sound that protected them from prying ears. "Look, Mary, I've worked in this house for a long time. I've seen a lot of things that, well, I shouldn't comment on. But that night of the party, I heard Stephen talking on the phone down in the garage. He was speaking quietly, but I managed to catch a few words. He was talking about taking the boy to a safe place." Mary felt her legs weaken. "Are you sure?" "I am. And there were more people involved in the conversation. From what I understood, it wasn't just him. When he saw me coming close, he quickly hung up and made up some excuse." At that moment, Isabella's shrill voice echoed through the house. "Mary, Mary, where are you? I need you to clean the library today." Mary exchanged a quick glance with Claude before heading inside the house. The Caldwell Library was one of the most impressive rooms in the mansion. A room with double-height ceilings, oak shelves that reached from floor to ceiling, and a collection of over 3,000 books. There was also a sliding wooden ladder and imported leather armchairs where the patriarch Henry used to read his financial newspapers. "The police finished their inspection here yesterday," Isabella explained, fixing her blonde hair. "They made a terrible mess. I need you to organize everything again before my father arrives for dinner." As Isabella left, Mary began her meticulous work. It was always how she liked to clean, with attention to detail, observing everything. And that's how she noticed something that the investigators had apparently missed. Among the books on economics and business, there was a small empty space on the shelf at a child's eye level. It was exactly where a children's illustrated atlas that Michael loved to flip through used to be. Mary remembered perfectly. On the few occasions she had cleaned the library with the boy nearby, he always picked that book to look at the colorful maps. Where could that book have gone? She thought aloud, running her fingers over the empty space. It was then that she heard heavy footsteps approaching. It was the elderly Henry Caldwell, 85 years old, leaning on his ivory cane. Despite his advanced age, his blue eyes retained the sharpness that had made him one of the most respected and feared businessmen in the Dallas real estate sector. "Mary, isn't it?" His voice was deep, authoritative. "How was the work?" "Well, Mr. Henry, just organizing the books that the police had messed with." The patriarch approached the shelf, his eyes scanning the volumes with familiarity. When he reached the empty space, he furrowed his thick eyebrows. "Where's the atlas that used to be here?" "I don't know, Mr. Henry. When I arrived, it was already missing." For a brief moment, Mary saw something pass through the old man's eyes, a shadow of fear, concern. But it was so quick that she almost thought she imagined it. "That book," Henry murmured, more to himself than to her. "Michael always asked about the places where his mother might be." The words slipped from the old man's lips as if they were a thought too loud, and he immediately composed himself, returning to his usual rigid posture. "Get back to your work," he said dryly, turning to leave. But Mary had heard, and now, piecing together the clues, the red soil, Stephen's delay, the missing atlas, and those drawings she still kept hidden at home, she began to form a theory. That left her increasingly uneasy. Michael had not been kidnapped, he had run away, and someone had helped him. The month of April arrived, bringing the first heavy rains of the autumn in Dallas, and with them a noticeable change in the behavior of the Caldwell family. Mary Johnson noticed this in details that only someone used to living between the lines could catch. The way Edward avoided looking directly at her during his cleaning instructions, the way Isabella obsessively checked her social media followers every 5 minutes, and especially the growing irritability of Patriarch Henry. It was a grey Friday when Mary decided to resort to the teachings she had brought from her homeland. In Texas, her grandmother Raimunda always said that when words hide, plants reveal the truth. It wasn't superstition. It was an ancient way to break the barriers people erected around their secrets. During lunchtime, when the family retreated to their chores, Mary prepared a lemon balm tea with chamomile in the staff kitchen. The specific combination had a relaxing effect that loosened people's tongues, something her grandmother had taught her when she was still a girl, helping with births in the town. Mr. Claude called, the gardener who was having his lunch in the backyard. "Would you like some tea? It's quite chilly." Claude gratefully accepted, and soon Stephen joined them. The driver seemed even more taciturn than usual, his dark eyes avoiding direct contact. At 60 years old, he had the typical appearance of someone who had spent their whole life in Dallas traffic, hunched shoulders, hands marked by the steering wheel, and a constantly worried expression. "How are you all coping with this situation?" Mary asked gently, serving the tea in simple white ceramic mugs. "It's tough, Mrs. Mary," sighed Claude. "The house isn't the same anymore. No one smiles, no one talks. It's just investigation, questions, phones ringing." Stephen took a long sip of the tea, and Mary noticed how his hands trembled slightly. That was the cue she had been waiting for. "Mr. Stephen, you who know all of Dallas, in your opinion, where could a 7-year-old child hide for so long?" The driver almost choked on the tea. "What do you mean, Mrs. Mary?" "Oh, I keep thinking, a child that age, alone, how would they survive? Where would they find food, shelter?" Mary kept her voice sweet, maternal. "You've taken Michael to many places, right? He knows the city well." No. Stephen shook his head vigorously. "The boy hardly leaves the house. Just school, doctor, those things, and always accompanied." "But he was curious, right? Always asking questions about the places you passed by?" Claude agreed. "That's true, Mrs. Mary. When I was working in the garden, he always wanted to know about the plants, where they came from, if they grew in other places." "And about people," Stephen murmured almost inaudibly, but Mary caught every word. "He always asked about people." The gardener and the housekeeper turned to the driver, who realized he had spoken too much. The tea was doing its job. "What kind of questions, Mr. Stephen?" Mary gently insisted. "Oh, just childish nonsense. He asked if I knew where his mother lived, if I had ever seen her on the street." Stephen ran his hand over his tired face. "I always said I didn't know because I really don't, but the boy insisted, saying that when he grew up, he would look for her." Mary felt her heart race, but maintained a serene expression. "And how did you respond?" "I told him not to think about it, that his father took good care of him, that his family was right there." Stephen's voice choked. "But lately he became more insistent. He even asked me if I could read hospital addresses." "Hospital?" Claude furrowed his brows. "Yeah, he had heard somewhere that his mother worked in a hospital. He asked if, when we passed one on the street, I could stop so he could see." Mary disguised her excitement by sipping the tea. Caroline, Michael's mother, was a nurse. The information perfectly matched what she had discovered by listening to whispered conversations among the maids from other houses in the neighborhood. "And did you stop?" she asked casually. Stephen fell silent for a long moment. visibly struggling with something internal. The tea continued to do its work, relaxing his defenses. Once, just once, I stopped. His voice came out almost as a whisper. It was at a hospital in the South Side. The boy was looking out the car window, searching. I don't know for what. He spent about 10 minutes just looking. Which hospital, Mr. Stephen? Mary tried to keep her voice casual, but her heart raced. South Side Municipal Hospital. It's far. And from here in the South Side, the boy said he had dreamed of that place. Claude shook his head, confused. How could he dream of a place he had never seen? I don't know. Kids have some imaginations, Stephen finished. Mary absorbed every word, every detail. Southside Municipal Hospital was over 30 kilometers away from the upscale neighborhood of Highland Park. How could Michael have dreamed of a specific place where possibly his mother worked? Mrs. Johnson, Claude interrupted her thoughts, do you think the boy might have tried to go after his mother? Before she could respond, Henry Caldwell's authoritative voice echoed through the yard. Stephen, we need to leave. Now. The driver quickly stood up, clearly relieved to have an excuse to end the conversation. But Mary had not finished her investigations. That night, in her small apartment in a modest neighborhood in Dallas, she spread out on the kitchen table all the elements she had collected. Michael's drawings with marked paths, the sample of red soil wrapped in a cloth, and now the information about Southside Municipal Hospital. She took her old cell phone and typed the hospital's address into Google Maps. The route that appeared on the screen took her breath away. To get there from Highland Park, one would have to pass through the major highway, where a large overpass was under construction, a construction site that used exactly the type of red soil she had found in the Caldwell service area. My God, she whispered to herself, the boy took this path. But a 7-year-old child couldn't cover that distance alone. Someone had taken him there, someone who knew exactly where to find Caroline. And from Stephen's words, that someone could be the very person the family trusted the most. Mary put everything away again, but now with a different weight in her chest. It was no longer just suspicion, it was almost certainty, and she needed to decide what to do with this information that could destroy not only her source of income, but potentially put her own life at risk. Because if her suspicions were correct, there were many more people involved in Michael's disappearance than any official investigation could imagine. The holiday on April 21st arrived with a radiant sun that contrasted sharply with the gloomy atmosphere surrounding the Caldwell family. Traditionally, everyone would head to the ranch in Texas, a 200-acre property that had belonged to the family for 3 generations. It was a refuge where Henry used to gather children, grandchildren, and relatives for moments of relaxation. But this year, the trip had the air of an escape from the media pressure surrounding Michael's disappearance. Mary Johnson was invited to accompany the family, an unprecedented situation that made her suspicious. Isabella justified it by saying she would need extra help with cleaning the ranch house. But Mary suspected there were other reasons. Perhaps they wanted to keep her under surveillance, away from Dallas and possible contacts with the press. The trip lasted 4 hours, with Stephen driving the family's black Sprinter in a deathly silence. Edward stared out the window with a blank expression, while Isabella posted melancholic stories on her social media, always careful to maintain the image of a devoted wife amid family tragedy. The ranch in Texas was a spectacle in itself. Restored colonial main house, private chapel, Olympic-sized pool, tennis court, and a stunning view of the valley stretching as far as the eye could see. It was there that the Caldwell family used to demonstrate their power and tradition, hosting politicians, businessmen, and high society personalities. From Dallas. Mary, you'll stay in the staff quarters, Isabella informed, pointing to a smaller building near the main house. Tomorrow we start cleaning early. But it was precisely because she was staying separately that Mary was able to observe the family when they thought they were alone. From the window of her simple room, she had a privileged view of the terrace where the Caldwells gathered for their meals. On the first night, during a candle-lit dinner, she witnessed a discussion that would completely change her perspective on the case. "Dad, we can't keep pretending everything is normal." Edward's voice was strained, choked by the whiskey he had been consuming since their arrival. "It's been over a month since Michael disappeared. The police have no leads. The press is tearing us apart." "Lower your voice, Edward." Henry's curt reply cut through the night air like a knife. "The walls have ears, even here." "Whose ears, Dad? Mary's? She's just a housekeeper who might be recording our conversations to sell to some journalist." Henry slammed his cane on the wooden floor. "Do you think I reached 85 years old being naive?" Mary felt a chill run down her spine. They really suspected her. "Henry, dear," Isabella interjected with her sweet, calculated voice, "maybe it's time to consider other possibilities." "What possibilities?" Edward turned to his wife with bloodshot eyes. "Well," Isabella hesitated, as if walking on eggshells. "What if Michael really went after Caroline? What if he managed to reach her?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mary held her breath, pressed against the window. "That's impossible." Edward shook his head vigorously. "He's a 7-year-old child. How would he get to the southern part of the city alone?" "Not alone." Henry's voice sounded grave and dangerous. "Someone helped him. The question is, who? Dad, do you think someone from the house—" "I don't think anything, Edward, I know." Henry stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. "For years, I've noticed strange behaviors. Conversations interrupted when I approach, exchanged glances, little lies." Mary felt her legs weaken. The old man knew something. "Stephen has worked for our family for 8 years, Henry continued, starting to pace back and forth on the terrace. "He knows every street in Dallas, has total access to the house, and most importantly, he's always had a special connection with the Michael." "Father, are you implying that Stephen—" "I'm not implying anything, I'm stating it." Henry stopped walking and faced his son. "On the Sunday of my birthday, Stephen arrived 3 hours late. He said he had car trouble, but there was nothing wrong with the BMW. We checked afterward." Isabella interjected again. "But why would he do that? What would be the reason?" "Money," Henry replied without hesitation. "Caroline might have offered him money to bring the boy, or blackmail. She's always been clever, that woman." Edward buried his face in his hands. "Father, if this is true, if Michael is with Caroline, then we will have a much bigger problem than a simple disappearance," Henry concluded coldly. "We will have a custody battle, and Caroline knows secrets about our family that could destroy us." Mary felt the world spin around her. What secrets were those? What did Caroline know that made her presence so threatening to the Caldwells? The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Stephen, who approached the terrace with hesitant steps. "Excuse me, Mr. Henry. You called for me?" The patriarch studied the driver for long seconds before responding. "Stephen, how many years have you worked for our family?" 8 years, Mr. Henry. And in all those years, you have always been loyal, discreet, reliable." "Always, sir." "Then explain to me," Henry's voice turned icy, "why, on the day of my birthday, you arrived 3 hours late, lying about car troubles." Stephen visibly paled, even in the dim light of night. His hands began to tremble. I had a setback, Mr. Henry. A personal matter." "What kind of personal matter?" The driver looked nervously at Edward and Isabella before answering. "My sister had a health issue. I had to take her to the hospital." "Interesting," Henry smiled coldly. "Because I called your sister yesterday. She was fine and said she hadn't had any health problems recently." The silence that fell over the terrace was so thick that Mary could hear it from her window. Stephen was cornered. "Mr. Henry, I can explain." "You can indeed, and you will explain, but not here." Henry struck the ground with his cane again. "Tomorrow, when we return to Dallas, you will accompany Edward to the police station and tell Officer Santos exactly where you took my great-grandson." "Father," Edward tried to intervene. "No discussion," Henry exploded. "Enough of the lies, enough of the games. I want my great-grandson back, even if I have to destroy half of Dallas to find him." Stephen left with his head down, and Mary saw him pass beneath her window, his shoulders hunched in defeat. But there was something in his expression that intrigued her. It didn't seem like guilt or fear. It looked like relief. That night, Mary could hardly sleep. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, but the final picture was much more complex and dangerous than she had imagined. If Stephen had indeed helped Michael find Caroline, it meant the boy was alive and safe. But it also meant a family war was about to erupt, and she was right in the middle of the battlefield. And there was still one question that tormented her. What secrets did Caroline know about the Caldwell family? Secrets serious enough that Henry would rather pretend his own great-grandson had been kidnapped than admit he might be with his biological mother. The return to Dallas on Monday was tense as a razor's edge. Stephen drove in absolute silence, his hands gripping the wheel as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. In the back seat, Edward stared fixedly out the window while Isabella pretended to sleep, but Mary noticed her eyes half open, watching every move the driver made through the rearview mirror. Henry had stayed at the ranch to rest, but Mary knew the real reason was strategic. The patriarch was buying time for Edward and the police to interrogate Stephen without his intimidating presence, calculating every move like a chess game. Back in the mansion's routine, Mary noticed that the atmosphere had completely changed. There was a palpable tension in the air, as if everyone was waiting for a bomb to explode, and it was in this climate of nervousness that she made her most shocking discovery. It was a Wednesday in May when Isabella called her for an unusual task, to organize and clean Edward's office, something usually done by the personal secretary. The environment was imposing, a solid mahogany desk, shelves filled with books on finance, framed diplomas on the walls, and a panoramic view of the neighborhood through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I need you to clean everything very well," Isabella instructed, nervous. "Especially organize the papers on the desk. It's been a mess since—" She didn't finish the sentence, but both knew what she was referring to. Alone in the office, Mary began her meticulous work. It was while moving a stack of contracts that she saw something that made her heart race. A blue children's tablet, half hidden among financial documents. It was Michael's iPad. Glancing quickly at the door to ensure she was alone, Mary turned on the device. The screen lit up, showing educational games, cartoons, and in the browser history, a series of searches that took her breath away. Southside Municipal Hospital nurses, how to find people who work in a hospital, Mother Nurse Caroline. Smith, bus from a neighborhood in Dallas to the South Side. Can a child walk alone on the street? The searches were dated from the days leading up to the disappearance. Michael hadn't just planned his escape. He had meticulously researched how to execute it, but the most impressive thing was that the searches revealed specific details about Caroline that a 7-year-old child shouldn't know unless someone had provided him with that information. Mary discreetly photographed the screens with her old cell phone, her hands trembling with nervousness. She was about to put the tablet back in place when she heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, she hid the device among the papers again and resumed cleaning the desk. With forced naturalness, "How's work?" Edward appeared at the door, his expression heavy with fatigue and anxiety. "It's going well, Mr. Edward. Just organizing the papers as Miss Isabella requested. Edward approached the desk, his eyes quickly scanning the documents. For a moment, Maria thought he would notice the tablet out of place, but he was clearly focused on other concerns. "Maria," he suddenly said, "can I trust you?" The question caught her off guard. "Of course, Mr. Edward." "No, I don't just mean about work. I'm talking about everything that's happening." He gestured vaguely. "My father thinks someone in the house helped Michael escape. Do you think that's possible?" Maria chose her words carefully. "Mr. Edward, Michael was a very clever child, always asking questions, always observing. It's possible he figured things out on his own." "What kind of things?" "Well," she hesitated, "he always asked about his mother, to all of us. Maybe he pieced together information from different sources." Edward closed his eyes, running his hands over his face. "Caroline, she wasn't a bad person, you know. She was just complicated. She came from a humble family, worked hard, wanted to provide stability for Michael. Then why did she leave?" The question slipped out before Maria could hold back. Edward looked at her in surprise, as if wondering whether he should answer. "My father thought she wasn't suitable for our family. He said she wanted our money, that she was using Michael for her own benefit." Edward sat heavily in the leather armchair. "But I knew that wasn't true. Caroline loved Michael more than her own life, and yet she left. My father can be very persuasive when he wants to be. He offered her a sum to stay away, on the condition that she never tried to contact him again. He said if she really loved Michael, she would let him have a better life, with better opportunities." Maria felt a pang of indignation, but kept her expression neutral. "And did she accept?" "At first, no. But my father has very competent lawyers. They threatened to sue her, take custody away, claim she couldn't provide for a child properly." Edward sighed deeply. "Caroline was young, working 3 jobs to support herself. She had no way to fight against our resources." The revelation hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. Henry had blackmailed Caroline, using the legal system and his influence to keep her away from her own son. And somehow, Michael had discovered this. "Mr. Edward," Maria said carefully, "what if Michael knew about this? What if he found out that his mother didn't abandon him?" Edward looked at her with wide eyes, as if the possibility had never occurred to him. "Do you think that someone told him?" Before Maria could respond, Isabella's shrill voice echoed down the hallway. "Edward, the police have arrived. They want to speak with you about Stephen." Edward quickly got up and left the office, leaving Maria alone again. But now she had much more than suspicions. She had concrete evidence that Michael had planned his escape and information that explained his motivations. Determined to find out more, she headed to the library. If Michael had researched his mother on the tablet, he might have left other traces around the house. As she carefully rummaged through the books, she found something that almost made her scream. Between the pages of a volume about geography, there were 3 handwritten letters. They were letters from Caroline to Michael, never delivered, dated over the past 2 years. Each expressed a mother's desperate love for the child she was forced to abandon. "My dear Michael, today you turned 6, and I couldn't be there to sing happy birthday. I work at Southside Municipal Hospital now, taking care of other children and thinking of you every day. Michael, my love, I hope that one day you understand that I never wanted to leave. Your grandfather said it would be better for you, that I would only interfere with your studies and your future. Son of my heart, I found your address, and I'm leaving these letters, hoping someone will deliver them to you. I want you to know that I never stopped loving you, not for a second." The letters had been intercepted. Someone in the Caldwell house was receiving them and hiding them, preventing them from reaching Michael. but somehow the boy had found them. Maria photographed each letter with trembling hands. Now she understood everything. Michael hadn't just discovered where his mother worked. He had read her letters of love and despair. He had realized that he was forcibly separated from her, and he had decided it was time to act. And someone in the Caldwell house, someone who had access to the letters and knew the truth, had decided to help him find Caroline. The question that remained was, who and why? May was coming to an end when the bomb finally exploded. It was a cloudy Friday, the kind that heralds a storm, when Maria arrived for work and found the Caldwell house in complete turmoil. Police cars were parked at the entrance, and she could see through the windows several investigators talking intensely with Edward in the office. "Maria," Isabella intercepted her before she could even put her bag down. "We need to talk, now." The influencer led her to the living room, where Henry was sitting in his leather armchair, with the darkest expression Maria had ever seen in her 8 months working there. The patriarch studied her with piercing eyes, like a judge evaluating a defendant. "Sit down," he ordered, pointing to the sofa in front of him. Maria obeyed, feeling her heart race. Her hands were sweating as she tried to maintain a calm appearance. But internally, a voice screamed that her investigation had been discovered. "Maria Smith," Henry pronounced her full name with a chilling solemnity. 46 years old, born in a small town in Texas. 3 children, 2 grandchildren. You've been working in our house for 8 months. "Yes, sir," she replied with a firm voice, despite her nervousness. "Last night," Henry continued, "we received an anonymous call. Someone claimed to have information about Michael's whereabouts, information that only someone inside this house could have." Mary felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean, Mr. Henry?" "Someone leaked to the press that we were investigating Stephen. The information appeared in the online newspaper Dallas, now with specific details about our private interrogations." Isabella interjected, her voice heavy with accusation. "Details that only we and the staff knew. And you," Henry fixed his eyes on hers, "are the only new staff member. The only one who hasn't gone through our more rigorous security checks." Mary felt her legs weaken, but forced herself to stand tall. "Mr. Henry, I never spoke to any journalist. I don't even know how to talk to those people." "Are you sure?" The question came laden with threat. "Because we know you have a cell phone. And we know that people in your financial situation are sometimes tempted by offers of easy money." The accusation was like a slap in the face. Mary felt indignation burn in her chest, but she knew that an emotional reaction could be interpreted as guilt. "Mr. Henry, I swear on my grandchildren's lives that I never said anything to anyone. My job here is sacred to me." "Then how do you explain this?" Isabella showed her a photo on her phone. It was an image of her talking with Claude and Stephen in the backyard, apparently taken from one of the house's security cameras. "You 3 always talking in secret, always stopping when someone approaches." "We only talk about everyday things," Mary defended herself, but she realized her explanation sounded weak even to her. "Mary," Edward's voice echoed through the room as he entered, followed by Officer Mark Smith. "The officer has some questions for you." Officer Mark Smith was an experienced man, 48 years old, who had seen it all in his 20 years of service. He studied Mary with professional eyes before sitting down. "Mrs. Mary, I'll be direct with you. We found evidence that someone in this house has been in contact with journalists, traces of calls, messages. Do you have anything to tell us?" "I don't, officer. I just work here, take care of the cleaning and leave." "Have you never overheard conversations about Michael's whereabouts? Never seen anything suspicious?" Mary hesitated for a fraction of a second. This was her chance to tell everything about the tablet, the letters, Michael's research, but something made her hesitate. If she revealed what she had discovered, it would prove her innocence regarding the leak, but it would also expose secrets that could have unpredictable consequences. Officer, what I heard were just conversations about concern for the boy. Everyone here is suffering. The interrogation continued for another hour, with repetitive questions and attempts to make her contradict herself. But Mary maintained her version, supported by the truth that she really hadn't spoken to any journalist. When the officer finally left without finding evidence against her, Henry approached Mary with a proposal that caught her completely off guard. "Mary, let's do a test." "What kind of test, Mr. Henry?" "You will continue working here as usual, but now you will be our eyes and ears. I want you to observe everything, note everything, and report directly to me anything suspicious you see or hear." The proposal was a perfect trap. If she accepted, she would become a spy against her own co-workers. If she refused, it would confirm suspicions about her loyalty. I don't quite understand, Mr. Henry." "It's simple. Someone in this house helped my great-grandson escape. Someone is sabotaging our family, and you will help us find out who it is. But I don't know how. You observe, listen, and report. That's why your salary will be temporarily doubled, $48 a day instead of $24. The amount was too tempting for someone in her financial situation. But Mary knew she was being manipulated, turned into a pawn in the Caldwell's power game. "And what if I can't find anything? Then at least we'll know it wasn't you who leaked the information." Henry smiled coldly. "Consider this an opportunity to prove your innocence." Mary accepted, knowing she had no choice. But while she pretended to be grateful for the proposal, her mind was already working on a completely different strategy. If the Caldwells wanted to turn her into a spy, she would use that position to uncover the full truth about Michael's disappearance. That night, in her apartment, she organized everything she knew up to that point. The photos of the research on the tablet, the intercepted letters from Caroline, the conversations she had witnessed. The picture that emerged was of a family willing to do anything to maintain control over Michael, even if it meant separating him from the mother who loved him. But there was one crucial piece of the puzzle still missing. Who had really helped Michael? Stephen was the obvious suspect, but what if there was someone else involved, someone the Caldwells would never suspect? And most importantly, was Michael really safe? Or had his brave attempt to find his mother put the child in even greater danger? Mary knew that now, more than ever, she needed to find those answers. Not just to protect her job, but to protect a 7-year-old boy who just wanted to reunite with the mother who had never stopped loving him. The game had changed, and she was determined to win it. June arrived, bringing the first truly cold days of the Dallas winter, and with it, a discovery that would completely change the course of the investigation. Mary had spent 2 weeks playing her role as a spy for the Caldwells, reporting mundane conversations and normal behaviors of the staff, while secretly conducting her own investigation. It was during a particularly chilly morning, while organizing the kitchen pantry, that she made the discovery. Mary was moving heavy shelves to clean behind them when she noticed something strange on the back wall. One of the wooden boards seemed slightly misaligned, as if it had been moved recently. "What a strange thing," she murmured to herself, running her fingers along the wood. Pressing lightly, the board gave way, revealing a concealed door. On the other side, a metal staircase descended into what appeared to be a basement. Mary's heart raced. In all the months working there, she had never known of this space's existence. Quickly glancing around to ensure she was alone, she grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and carefully descended the steps. What she found took her breath away. It was a subterranean shelter, clearly built decades ago, probably in the 1950s during the Cold War fears. The space was surprisingly spacious and well ventilated, about 200 square feet. There were shelves filled with old supplies, some furniture covered with cloth, and in the far corner, something made Mary stagger. An improvised mattress with blankets, plastic plates with leftover food, and children's drawings scattered across the floor. "My God," she whispered, kneeling to examine the drawings. They were definitely made by Michael. She recognized his style and his obsession with drawing house plans. But these were different. They depicted the very shelter, with precise details of the stairs, the secret entrance, and even a signaling system that seemed to indicate when it was safe to go up or down. In one corner, she found the missing children's illustrated atlas from the library. Its pages were marked with red circles around hospitals in South Dallas, and glued to the back cover a small, faded photo, a young woman with brown hair holding a baby. It was Caroline with newborn Michael. "He was here," Mary spoke to the empty space, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Michael hid here for weeks." But this raised even more complex questions. How had a 7-year-old child discovered the existence of this shelter? And more importantly, who knew he was there? Mary photographed everything with her cell phone, documenting every detail. It was then that she heard footsteps in the kitchen above. Quickly she ascended the stairs and closed the secret passage, returning to her task of organizing the shelves as if nothing had happened. "Mary," it was Claude's voice, "are you there?" "I'm here, Mr. Claude, just organizing the pantry." The gardener approached, but there was something different in his expression. He looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. "Miss Mary, I need to talk to you. It's important." "Go ahead." "Not here. After lunch, meet me in the tool shed, and please don't mention this to anyone." The mystery deepened. Mary spent the rest of the morning on high alert, her mind working intensely to connect the new discoveries. Michael had hidden in the subterranean shelter, but not alone. Someone had known where he was, someone had fed him, someone had helped him plan his next steps. During lunch, she discreetly observed everyone's behavior in the house. Edward remained downcast, drinking more than he should. Isabella was obsessed with her image on social media, constantly posting about tough times and family strength. Henry, who had returned from the ranch, roamed the house like a general inspecting troops, suspicious of everyone. At 2 in the afternoon, Mary headed to the tool she'd located at the back of the property. Claude was waiting for her, his hands dirty with soil, visibly trembling. "Ms. Mary," he began without preamble, "I know you've been investigating what happened to Michael." The statement caught her off guard. "What do you mean, Mr. Claude?" "I saw you taking photos of the letters in the library. I saw when you examined the red dirt in the service area. You're not just a housekeeper, are you?" Mary quickly assessed the situation. Claude could be an ally or a threat. She decided to gamble on honesty. "I am, Mr. Claude, just a housekeeper who cares about a missing child." "Then you need to know the truth." Claude looked around once more before continuing. "I know where Michael is." The world stopped around Mary. "What do you mean?" "He wasn't kidnapped, Miss Mary, and he didn't run away on his own either." Claude took a deep breath. "There's someone in this house who has known the location of the old shelter in the basement for a long time, someone who knew the boy discovered how to get there." "Who?" "The least suspicious person of all, someone who has been here for years, who knows every corner of this house, and who had very personal reasons to help Michael." "Mr. Claude, for God's sake, tell me who it is." "I can't say the name here, but I can tell you where Michael is now." He leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. "He's no longer in the shelter. He was taken to a safe place 3 weeks ago, a place where he can stay close to his mother without being found by the family." Mary felt her legs weaken. "He's with Caroline?" "Close to her, very close, and he's safe, Miss Mary. He's being cared for and protected. But why don't you tell the police, the family? Claude laughed bitterly. Because you don't understand who the Caldwells really are. They don't want Michael back to protect him. They want him back to control him. What does that mean? It means that if they find out where he is, they will do everything to ensure that Caroline never gets near him again. They will use all their power, all their money, all their lawyers to destroy any chance of the real mother getting her son back. Mary absorbed the words, like punches to the stomach. And who is helping him? I need to know. You will find out very soon, because this person has decided it's time to act. After months of planning, after ensuring everything was safe, it's time to reunite mother and son for good. When? Next Sunday, during the St. Anthony Festival at Central Park. Claude smiled for the first time in weeks. It will be a reunion that no one will forget. Before Mary could ask more questions, they heard Henry calling for Claude from the house. The gardener quickly stepped away, leaving her alone with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Michael was alive, safe, and about to reunite with the mother who had never stopped searching for him. The question that remained was whether Mary would have the courage to choose a side in this family war that was about to explode. And most importantly, was she prepared to discover the identity of the person who had risked everything to return a child to the arms of the mother who loved her? The Sunday of the St. Anthony Festival dawned with a typical grey sky of a Dallas winter, but there was a palpable energy in the air that Mary could feel from the moment she woke up. It was June 13th, and she knew this would be the day when all the secrets would finally come to light. Central Park, in the heart of Dallas, had been prepared since early morning for the traditional festival. Stalls of typical food spread throughout the area, with the aroma of boiled corn, hot apple cider, and fried pastries mixing with the smell of rain that threatened to fall. Colorful flags fluttered between the trees, and the sound of accordion players and guitarists created the perfect atmosphere for a reunion that would change lives forever. Mary arrived at the Caldwell mansion at 8 in the morning, as always. But this time she carried the tension of someone who knows they are about to witness something historic. The family seemed strangely calm. Edward had left early for a meeting with lawyers, Isabella was focused on her social media posts, and Henry remained locked in his office, making mysterious calls. It was while she was tidying up the living room that she overheard a conversation that made her stop breathing. Isabella was on the phone, nervously pacing the room, unaware that Mary was there. "Yes, I understand it needs to be discreet," Isabella said quietly. "But are you sure it's today, at the festival in the park?" Mary hid behind the tall bookshelf, her heart racing. "No, I won't be there. It would be too suspicious. But are you sure she will show up?" Isabella paused, listening to the response. "And the boy? Is he really okay?" Another long pause. "I know it was risky to hide him all this time, but we had no choice. Henry would never allow—" Isabella's voice cracked. "You did the right thing. Michael deserves to be with his true mother." Mary felt the world spin around her. Isabella? The seemingly cold and selfish stepmother was involved in the plan to reunite Michael with Caroline? "Just be careful. If Henry finds out it was me who—" The conversation was interrupted by Henry's arrival, who entered the room with his cane striking hard against the marble floor. Isabella quickly hung up the phone, pretending to act naturally. "Who were you talking to?" The patriarch's question was laden with suspicion. "My press secretary. We are preparing a campaign to raise awareness about missing children." Mary watched the scene from her hiding place, seeing Isabella lie with impressive naturalness. But there was something in her eyes, a genuine fear of Henry that she had never noticed before. "Isabella," the old man's voice came dangerously low, "I hope you understand the importance of keeping our family united during this difficult time." "Of course, Henry, always. Because if I find out that anyone, has betrayed our trust. The consequences will be very severe." The threat hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Henry withdrew, and Mary saw Isabella sit heavily on the sofa, her hands trembling. 2 hours later, Mary received a text message on her old cell phone. "Central Park, 4 p.m., next to the pastry stall. Come alone. I for Isabella." The confirmation she needed. The rest of the day passed in slow motion. Mary completed her tasks mechanically, her mind focused on the approaching meeting. At 3:30 p.m., she said goodbye normally, as if it were just another ordinary Sunday. The park was filled with families enjoying the festival. The sound of popular music mixed with the shouts of children playing and the noise of vendors selling their goods. Mary located the pastry stall and waited, watching every person who passed by. At 4:05 p.m., she saw a woman approaching slowly. Brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail, faded jeans, worn sneakers. It was Caroline. Mary recognized her immediately from the photos she had seen in the intercepted letters, although she looked older, marked by the suffering of the past years. Caroline looked at her hesitantly. "Are you Mary?" "I am. And you are Caroline." "Isabella said that you know the truth about what happened." Before Mary could respond, she saw a small figure running between the stalls, dark hair, big curious eyes, running directly towards them. It was Michael. "Mommy!" The boy's cry cut through the festival like a sharp knife. Caroline knelt down, opening her arms, and Michael threw himself against her with a force that almost knocked her over. Mother and son embraced in the middle of the park, crying, laughing, whispering words of love that had been held back for years. "My son, my dear son," Caroline repeated, covering Michael's face with kisses. "Mommy loves you so much, so much." "I knew you didn't abandon me," Michael said between sobs. "I read your letters. I knew you were looking for me." Mary watched the scene with tears in her eyes, but part of her remained alert. Where was Isabella? How had Michael gotten there? It was then that she saw her. Isabella was coming out from behind one of the stalls, but she was not alone. Claude was with her, and he held a small suitcase with clothes and belongings of Michael. "Mrs. Johnson," Claude approached, "you needed to see this. You needed to understand that not everything is as it seems in the Caldwell household." Isabella knelt beside Caroline and Michael, her hands gently touching the boy's hair. "Hi, Michael. How are you, dear?" "Aunt Isabella." Michael turned to her with a radiant smile. "You did it. You brought my mommy." The truth finally revealed itself completely. Isabella was not the cold and calculating stepmother everyone imagined. She was Michael's secret protector, the one who had uncovered the truth about the forced separation between mother and son, and who had risked everything to correct it. "Why?" Mary asked, looking directly into Isabella's eyes. "Because," Isabella replied with a choked voice, "I was also separated from my mother as a child. I know what it's like to grow up feeling like a part of you is missing." She looked at Michael and Caroline, still embraced. "And because I discovered the letters that Henry intercepted, I found out how he blackmailed Caroline. I uncovered the malice behind all that talk of protecting the child's best interest." Mary absorbed the revelation, finally understanding the complexity of the situation. "And now?" she asked. "What will happen?" Isabella stood up, determined. "Now, Caroline and Michael will have the chance they always deserved. Away from the toxic influence of the Caldwells. Away from the lies and manipulations." But even as the family gathered in the midst of the St. Anthony's Day celebration, Mary knew that the war was just beginning. Henry Caldwell would not accept this defeat passively, and she, as the only witness to everything she had discovered, was about to become a key player in the final confrontation that was approaching. The Monday, following the St. Anthony's Day celebration, dawned like the beginning of a storm that completely swept away the apparent tranquility of the Caldwell mansion. Mary arrived at work to find the house in a state of siege. Private security patrolled the gardens, lawyers came in and out with briefcases full of documents, and Henry himself walked the halls like a general commanding a war. The discovery that Michael had met Caroline in the park did not take long to reach the patriarch's ears. Security cameras in the area, private investigators, and Henry's own network of influential contacts quickly identified what had happened. And the fury of the 85-year-old man was a terrible sight to behold. "How dare she?" Henry's voice echoed through the office as he spoke on the phone with his lawyers. 4 years without a word, and now she shows up to kidnap my great-grandson. Mary discreetly cleaned the corridor near the office, catching every word of the one-sided conversation. "I don't care how much it costs. I want them to file an international kidnapping lawsuit if necessary. I want Caroline Smith arrested for the abduction of a minor, and I want to know exactly who helped her." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Mary knew she was under suspicion, but she was not the only one. Henry suspected everyone, employees, family, even his own son, Edward. It was in that tense moment that she saw Edward coming down the stairs, completely different from the defeated man he had been in recent weeks. His eyes shone with a determination she hadn't seen since the early days after the disappearance. "Father?" Edward entered the office without knocking. "We need to talk." "Not now, Edward. I'm busy trying to fix the damage that—" "No." The firmness in his son's voice interrupted Henry. "Now, Father, and you'd better sit down because we have a lot to clarify." Mary moved closer to the door, pretending to clean a picture on the wall. "Father, I know it was you who intercepted Caroline's letters. The silence that followed was deafening. I know you threatened to sue her, that you offered her money to stay away, that you used our lawyers to intimidate her." Edward's voice grew louder with each word. "And I know you did all this behind my back, making me believe that Caroline had abandoned Michael by choice. Edward, you don't understand the complexities." "No, Father. You are the one who doesn't understand," Edward exploded. "Michael is my son. It was my decision whether Caroline could be part of his life or not. That woman was not fit to... That woman was a nurse. She worked honestly. She loved our son more than anything in the world." Edward slammed his fist on the table. "And you destroyed our family with your manipulations." Mary could hardly believe what she was hearing. Edward had finally discovered the complete truth about the separation. "And there's more," Edward continued, his voice now more controlled but still filled with anger. "I hired private investigators. I found out that Caroline has been working at Southside Municipal Hospital for 3 years. I discovered that she tried to contact us dozens of times, and I found out that all those attempts were blocked by you. How did you... The letters were in your safe, Father. All of them. Years of letters that Caroline wrote to Michael, trying to explain that she had not abandoned him." Edward pulled an envelope from his pocket, including this one, which arrived last week. Henry paled at the sight of the letter. "Edward, you need to understand that I was protecting... Protecting what? Your pride? Your image as a controlling patriarch?" Edward stood up, walking toward his father. "You separated a 7-year-old boy from his mother because you couldn't accept that she didn't belong to our social class. She wanted our money. She never asked for a dime. She didn't even accept the alimony I offered," Edward shouted. "You created this fantasy in your head to justify the unjustifiable." The discussion was interrupted by Isabella's arrival, who entered the office with determined steps. But there was something different about her. The submissive posture had given way to fierce dignity. "Henry," she said, "simply, I came to say goodbye." The patriarch turned to her with eyes blazing with anger. You! It was you who helped that woman. I helped a mother find her son, Isabella calmly corrected. I righted an injustice that lasted for years. You betrayed our family. I saved a child, Isabella retorted. Michael was withering away here, Henry. Without smiling, without playing, always asking about his mother. You were destroying a child's soul to feed the ego of an old man. The accusation hit Henry like a slap. He stood up, leaning heavily on his cane, trembling with rage. You know nothing. This family has a name, a tradition. This family has rotten secrets, Isabella interrupted him. And I will no longer be a part of it. It was at that moment that Mary heard footsteps approaching quickly down the hallway. It was Claude, running towards the office. "Mr. Edward! Mr. Edward!" The gardener arrived breathless. "The police! They are here with a warrant for arrest!" Through the window, Mary saw 3 police cars parked at the entrance. Officer Smith was getting out of one of them, accompanied by several investigators. "Warrant for whom?" Edward asked. "For your Henry," Claude replied, still trying to catch his breath. "And for you too, Mr. Edward. Something about concealing a minor and obstruction of justice." The world stopped for a moment. Henry leaned heavily on the table, his face losing all color. "How could they?" he murmured. "Caroline filed a police report," Isabella explained calmly, "with all the intercepted letters, with all the threats you made, with all the evidence of the blackmail, and I witnessed it all." The doorbell rang, followed by firm knocks on the door. Officer Smith's voice echoed through the house. "Civil police! We have search and arrest warrants to execute." Mary quickly stepped away from the office door, but not before seeing the complete look of defeat on Henry Caldwell's face. The patriarch who had controlled lives and destinies for decades was finally facing the consequences of his actions. As the police entered the mansion, Mary knew that her own life was also about to change forever. She was a witness to everything, had evidence, had knowledge of secrets that could condemn or absolve. And somewhere in South Dallas, Michael was finally sleeping in the arms of the mother who had never stopped searching for him, unaware that the battle for his future was just beginning. The storm had arrived, and no one would come out unscathed. 3 months after the storm that shook the Caldwells, Mary Johnson walked through the quiet streets of Southside on a sunny September morning. Winter had given way to spring, and with it a sense of renewal hung in the air. In her hands she carried a homemade chocolate cake, her grandmother's recipe from Texas, wrapped lovingly in an embroidered dish towel. The Santa Teresa Community School occupied an old, renovated house, with colorful walls painted by the children themselves, and a small yard where simple toys shared space with carefully tended flower pots. It was there that Mary now worked, as a cleaning assistant and caregiver, in an environment that made her feel truly useful for the first time in decades. "Aunt Mary?" Michael's cheerful voice echoed through the yard when he saw her arriving. The boy ran towards her with a radiant smile that completely contrasted with the sad and withdrawn child she had known at the Caldwell mansion. "Hi, my dear." Mary knelt down to receive the enthusiastic hug. "How are you today?" "I'm great. Mommy said you were bringing cake." Michael's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "And I did. Chocolate cake just like the one I used to make for my kids when they were little." Caroline approached, drying her hands on her apron. At 32, she had regained the sparkle in her eyes that years of separation had dulled. She worked part-time at the hospital and part-time as the school nurse, a solution that allowed her to stay close to Michael while contributing to the community. "Mary, you didn't have to." Caroline smiled, but her eyes showed the deep gratitude that words could not express. "Of course I had to. Today is a special day." It truly was. September 15th marked exactly 3 months since the truth had fully come to light. 3 months since the Caldwell scandal had occupied the front pages of the newspapers in Dallas, revealing not only Michael's case, but an entire network of manipulations and abuses of power that had spanned decades. Henry Caldwell had been convicted of the concealment of a minor ideological falsehood and obstruction of justice. At 85, he was serving time under house arrest, confined to his own real estate empire that was now being investigated for tax irregularities. Edward, after a long legal battle, had been acquitted of the most serious charges, but was facing a legal battle for joint custody of Michael with Caroline. Isabella had divorced and moved to the countryside, where she opened an NGO to reunite children with their biological families. Stephen continued to work as a driver, but now for a family that respected him. And Claude had become a silent hero, whose courage in testifying against his employers had helped ensure that justice was served. "Aunt Mary," Michael tugged at her hand, "do you want to see the drawing I made for you?" "Of course I do." Michael led her to a small table where a drawing made with colored pencils was spread out. It was no longer a house plan with escape routes. It was a drawing of a family, a woman in an apron, Caroline, a smiling child, himself, and an elderly lady with grey hair holding a cleaning cloth, Mary. "It's all of us," Michael explained proudly. "You, me, and Mommy, our chosen family." Mary felt her eyes welling up. Chosen family was an expression that Michael had learned from Mary Johnson, the psychologist who was accompanying her, found a way to understand that love did not depend solely on blood ties, but on care, protection, and genuine affection. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen in my life," Mary said, kissing the boy's forehead. At that moment, the school principal, Mrs. Anderson, approached the group. "Mary, there's a call for you in the office. They say it's important." With her heart racing, important calls rarely brought good news for people in her situation. Mary headed to the school phone. "Hello? Is this Mary Johnson?" The voice on the other end was formal yet kind. "Yes, it is. This is the Public Defender's Office. My name is Dr. Robert Smith. I'm calling about the case regarding the Caldwell family." Mary held the phone tightly. "Yes? The court has finalized its decision regarding the permanent custody of Michael. Caroline Smith has been granted full custody, and Edward Caldwell will have the right to bi-weekly supervised visits." The relief that washed over Mary was so intense that she had to lean against the desk. "And is there no chance of an appeal?" Henry Caldwell's lawyer tried, but the judge was categorical. The evidence of psychological manipulation and forced separation was deemed too severe. Michael will remain with his biological mother. "Doctor, thank you so much for letting me know. Actually, Mrs. Johnson, I'm also calling to thank you. Your testimony was crucial for this decision to be made. You saved a family." After hanging up, Mary stood in silence for a few moments, absorbing the magnitude of the news. When she returned to the playground, Caroline and Michael were waiting for her anxiously. "What happened, Aunt Mary?" Michael asked, noticing her emotional expression. "It was very good news, my dear. Very good indeed." Caroline immediately understood from Mary's look. Her hands flew to cover her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Is it final?" she whispered. "It's final." Mother and son embraced once more, but now it was different. It was no longer the desperate embrace of someone fearing separation again. It was the serene embrace of those who knew they would never be apart again. Later that day, during the impromptu celebration that took over the school, Mary watched Michael running around the playground with other children, finally free to be just an 8-year-old child. She thought about how life had changed for everyone since that Sunday in March, when the boy had gone missing. Caroline approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Mary, I can never thank you enough for everything you've done. You don't need to thank me, Caroline. Any mother would do the same. That's not true, and you know it. Caroline took a sip of her coffee. You risked your job, your safety, your financial stability to help two people you barely knew. Mary smiled, watching Michael trying to teach other kids how to play soccer. You know, Caroline, when I was little, my grandmother always said that we are born twice in life. The first time when we come out of our mother's womb, and the second time when we discover why we came into the world. And have you discovered? I have. I came to unite families that were unjustly separated. I came to give a voice to those who have none. I came to prove that a housekeeper from rural Texas can change the fate of powerful people when justice is on her side. At that moment, Michael ran up to them, panting and smiling. Aunt Mary, tomorrow is my birthday. I'm turning 8. Mummy said I can invite you to the party. Of course I'm coming, my dear. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And do you know what I'm going to wish? For when I blow out the candles. What? Michael looked at Caroline, then at Mary, and finally said, I'm going to wish for our chosen family to stay together forever. As the sun set over the neighborhood in Dallas, painting the sky in golden and pink hues, Mary Johnson knew that his wish had already been granted, not by the magic of birthday candles, but by the courage of ordinary people who chose to do the right thing at the right time. The housekeeper who came from the countryside to work in the homes of the wealthy in Dallas had discovered that her true wealth was not in the salaries she received, but in her ability to see injustices and have the courage to fight against them. And Michael finally slept peacefully every night, knowing that when he woke up, he would find Caroline's loving face beside him and Mary's caring hands looking after them all. The story that began with a mysterious disappearance ended with proof that true love always finds a way back home. Please like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and if you watched until here, comment, I watched until here, and leave your opinion about this story. And don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen, because it's very emotional.